Thank you to our sponsor, Workday, for bringing us today's webinar. For more information about Workday, visit them at workday.com and learn how they are shaking up the world of enterprise software.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Again, Alicia Salmon, Director of Operations and Marketing at LeapGen. So happy to be here. Please drop in the chat where you're watching from. We'd love to get the chat going. I'm in Dallas, Texas, so at a cool 65, 70 degrees today. I know Jason is not in Texas, so we'll hear from him in a minute. But like she said, we want to thank Workday and also HRE for having us here today. Make sure to stay on at the end. We have a special offer for you as well as the slides we'll send out tomorrow. We want to make sure that you use that chat feature, interact with us, ask questions like she said. We'll be monitoring that and answering questions live, so please feel free to do that. Without further ado, I have the privilege to announce our speaker today, Jason Averbook. He is the co-founder and CEO of LeapGen. He's recognized globally as one of the top 3 thought leaders around HR technology and the future of work with over 25 years of experience. Jason, please take it away.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Alicia. But thanks so much, and really, really excited to be here today. Happy Tuesday to everyone watching live, and for those of you not watching live, whatever day it is. As Alicia said, please use the chat. So I already see we've got Wagner, we've got Katie, we've got Norma, we've got Heidi, good starts, Marissa. But please open up your chat, change the send to everyone, and let us know that you're here. We're going to do a lot of interaction today throughout this webinar, so please, please, please use the chat as we go. We've got Miami here. We've got Mike Drew here, even though he didn't say where he is. But please use the chat, as like I said, and we're going to David in Minneapolis also. It's foggy, right, David? Wisconsin, cold and fog. Canton, Ohio. Sheila, great to be here. Sheila, where are you joining from? Sarah's in Nashville. Los Angeles, go Dodgers. Washington, I used to live in Los Angeles. I'm not sure about the Dodger part. Snowing in Reno, not surprising. Rainy California, UK, Princeton, Vancouver. Awesome. Well, today we have a packed agenda that we're really going to cover 3 key areas. Sorry, Jamie. We should be able to change that to everyone so everyone has the opportunity to chat with everyone instead of just panelists. Guatemala. Hi, Maricel. Thank you so much for joining. Lisa from Oakland. Sarah from Portland. We'll see if our producer can change. Cyprus, welcome. We'll see if our producer can change that so everyone can chat to everyone. But there's really 3 key things we're going to talk about today. The first thing is, what is digital anyway? As you know, every single organization in the world is talking about digital transformation today in one way or another. And we as humans are all talking about digital in one way or another. So really, really important to think about and understand and come up with a common term as far as what we're going to think of when we think of digital. And by the way, I would love it if this is something you can take back to your team and deliver, or it's something I always say I'm happy to deliver free of charge anytime to your organization to get everyone on the same page as far as what is digital. Second is why it matters now, and really what the workforce expects when it thinks about digital, and how that ties into technology deployments, not implementations, but deployments of strategies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the third thing is 8 digital habits, 8 ways that you as an organization can measure yourself as to whether or not you're ready to be digital. It looks like we've got the everyone available now in the chat. It's amazing technology transformation right before our eyes. So please let us know. Stockholm, thank you, Juna, from joining. I hope I got that correct. But these are the 3 things. Also, for people like Tracy, Jamie, Elena, if there's other things that you have questions about throughout, please put them up. At LeapGen, we work with organizations to help them transform. And those transformations can be small, little things, like we're going to transform the way that our employee experience looks and feels. Now, you say that might not be small, but it might be small. all the way to saying, hey, we're going to transform the way HR works. HR gets things done, drives things within an organization to drive business outcomes. So all we focus on are transformation. I'm sorry, Candy, about not hearing the audio. I hope everyone else can. I'm not going to tell you to turn up your volume. That would be way too obvious. And then when you think about what we all do when it comes to digital, it's really these three things. And you guys do this every single day, not just at work, but in your personal life. You come up with a strategy. You deploy that strategy. And then you sustain that strategy. So I got up this morning, it was 18 degrees. I said, whoa, I have to come up with a strategy as to how I'm not going to be cold. I deployed that strategy, planned ahead, put on layers. As part of that strategy, I implemented putting on a coat. Okay? And then what was my ROI, or what was my proof that I wasn't cold? When we think about what do we do in our organizations, we say we're going to change the way we do performance management. We're going to change the way we recruit. We're going to change the way we service our workforce. What do? We come up with a strategy. As part of that strategy, we deploy that strategy. Now, the difference between deployment and implementation is key. Implementation is just getting the technology in. Deployment is deploying our strategy. I hope you guys understood that. Deployment and implementation are two different things. Implementation is part of deployment. And that's very, very key when we think about digital. Okay? Very, very key when we think about digital. And then lastly, how do we sustain and then go back and continue to do it? We call this an infinity loop. And the way that your organization should be structured and the roles in which your organization within the digital HR function, notice I said you all have a digital HR function, should be structured in a way that supports this model of infinity continuation. When we think about digital, we define it with these four things: a mindset and vision, an understanding of who our audience is, an understanding that processes generate data, but journeys drive feeling, and lastly, how and maybe should we use technology. Does this make sense? I'm going to blow this up a little bit further. You're going to get copies of these slides at the end of the session. But how do we make sure that our mindset and vision is coordinated? We're working east-west, not north-south in silos. Our audience is understood. Who is it? Who is it that we're actually designing and deploying to? Is it HR people that know how to speak HR? Or is it employees and managers that know how to speak English or whatever the language is? Third, how do we realize that once again, if I'm going to focus on employee experience, I'm focusing on the big F word, feeling. How do people feel when they're taking part in an interaction or a capability? And then lastly, there's the tech. And those percentages, you guys, are about how much time, effort, and resource you should spend in order to deploy your strategy. I'm going to stop right here and ask you if this makes sense. Just put yes or no in the chat. Okay, and if there are any questions, please put those in the chat as well. But this is a very, very, very important point, you guys, and I would love it if every one of you would get this tattooed on your body. Okay, in henna, not in ink, because it changes, but it's a very important point. If we're going to be digital and we're going to take advantage of the world's best capabilities and the best technology we've ever had, we have to think this way, which means that we all must shift our mindset from doing technology projects to being a digital function. Shifting our focus from doing technology projects to being a digital function. And Roy, your comment about technology can't just be 10%, I would love to talk to you offline. Connect with me on LinkedIn, because I can show you how that works. Almost always people say something like that. But at the end of the day, when they actually look at add up all the hours and all the time, changing managers' behavior, changing employees' behavior, measuring, what they realize is that we've been spending way too much time on tech, only not to get that outcome that we're trying to achieve. So we, from a mindset standpoint, have to shift from doing technology projects to being digital. And just as a way to start, I want to make sure that everyone understands. And Sally, you're exactly right. Changing mindsets is the biggest challenge. That's why it's the number one percentage thing. Unfortunately, people just buy tech, and then they say, let's move into implementation. Oh, and along the way, we'll change the mindset. That doesn't work. We have to do it together as part of it. So digital isn't about eliminating the human element. It's about enhancing and leveraging it. We can have I'd love it if you guys, we do live broadcasts every Friday. Last Friday we had a chat about ChatGPT. Is that eliminating humans? No. It's making us all better. And we can have conversations all day long about that. And I'm happy to. I would love to. Digital is about making our work and everything that we do to give back to our organizations better. So our first poll, I just want to get a sense. Does your organization spend more time on being digital or doing technology? And once again, there is no bad answers here. Okay? And while you guys are answering, I in the chat am going to put my LinkedIn information, because I want to make sure that when I say, Tom, answer in the poll, hopefully you guys see the poll, not here. Otherwise, I've got bad data. But connect with me on LinkedIn. I don't talk about my food I eat or anything like that. But I'd love to connect with you guys, some of you that didn't agree with necessarily some of the numbers, and just talk about those. But does your organization spend more time on being digital or doing technology? Poll has ended. Let's go ahead and share those results. It takes a little bit to do the tabulation. I bet it's about 60% technology, 40% digital. That's my guess. And I can't see the numbers. Whew. I was off. We have about 77% doing technology and 21% being digital. So really, really important, you guys, to take everything I'm going to talk about. I'm so glad you're all here because this is what I'm going to talk about the rest of the day, the rest of the session, is how do we shift this? How do we shift that? So let's start with mindset and vision. I hope that you've had an opportunity in your lives to experience your What's Your Why from Simon Sinek. I had an opportunity to work with Simon a few times. David, thanks for calling that out. And Simon focuses on the what's your why. Now, other people do as well, but this is so important to bring into the work we do. Why are we doing what we're doing? Just why? I spent my morning with one of our clients doing a design session around Workday. Now, we work with all technologies all over the world, but this morning it happened to be a Workday session. And, they were like, hey, we need to have 9 levels of approval. We need to have 14 levels of checks and balances. And I'm like, why? That's how we do it today. That's not your why. If that's your why, stop. Please, stop. There's nothing that's the same about work today than there was 2 years ago. I'll say it again. There's nothing about work today that should be the same as it was 2 years ago. So therefore, we shouldn't do it the way we've always done it. It's 2022 outside of work. Now it's 2023 outside of work. Look at this dated slide. What year is it inside? Just ask yourself this question. And please ask it often. It's 2023 outside of work. What year does it feel like inside? And don't look at your technology and say, oh, our user interface was fine. It's not about the user interface. It's about how it feels to get stuff done. Say it again. It's about how it feels to get stuff done. The biggest reason that it feels different outside than inside is because outside of work, we've been doing, and organizations and enterprises have been doing digital transformation for the last 10 years. Inside HR, we've been doing a lot of technology transition. What's the difference? Trans means change. Trans means change. So ask yourself, are you doing a technology change, or are you doing a change to how you think, a change to how you work, a change to how you deliver, a change to how you measure? Does that make sense? I beg you to keep this in mind. What are we changing? Are we just changing tech? And by the way, it might be okay to just change tech. But if you're just going to change tech, your measure of success should be what? A new technology. If you want to change the way you work, if you want to change the way what your outcomes are, if you want to change the way people interact with tools, you're doing a digital transformation, not a technology transition. Okay, time to check in. Yes or no? Make sense. Yes, no, yes, no. Any questions? Please put it in the chat. I wish we had thumbs ups. But put it in the chat because it's really, really important, you guys. Really, really important to help get this across to people, especially if you're doing any kind of deployment. Notice if I didn't say implementation. If you're doing an implementation, it's even more important, but any sort of deployment. Digital does not equal technology. When we think about digital transformation, there's really 4 key things we're looking at, you guys. 4 key things. Scalability. We need to be able to scale in a world that's very volatile. We need to be agile for the same reasons. And not just because, hey, we're going to acquire someone or we're going to grow outside the country we're in, but guess what? We may change a benefit. We may change a comp plan. We may change the way we recruit. We may change the way we measure performance. We may be focused on skills instead of jobs. We have to be agile, you guys, because the way work is transforming right now, we don't know what it's going to look like by the end of this year. We have to make sure we're empowering people to be part of the solution, not do it for them. And then lastly, we have to deliver a workforce experience that makes people want to work in our organization. Those 4 things. So when you think about your measures of success, your vision for your transformation, it has to include these 4 things. Now, every time I present this, someone says, we're a small company. It doesn't matter. Your resources may matter and change. The technology used may change, but you have the same design imperatives. Okay, if you live in a small house or a big house, you still have walls. If you live in a small house or big house, you still use paint. The same design imperatives. And for you, best practice is whatever works best for your organization. There's way too much focus on taking what a software vendor develops and saying this is the way we have to do it. Now, I'm not saying that's not good to try, but what you need to do is take your optimal way of doing things to drive the outcomes you're trying to achieve balance it with the software and how it's delivered, and then calibrate it. Otherwise, what you're trying to do is you're trying to take something and jam it into your company that doesn't necessarily fit. Now, for the technology people, what are they going to say? They're going to say, we went live. Woo! But for the business and for the function, they're going to say, our products, this technology is not meeting our needs. What do you mean it's not meeting our needs? You told us if I look at every quadrant out there, it says it's the best technology out there. It's not about the technology. It's about how we use it. It's about how we design it, and it's about how we deploy it. I can't say that enough. We waste so much money when it comes to HR tech and workforce tech by putting in technology first without truly thinking about what it is we're trying to achieve. Aveline, I hope I'm saying your name right. Design with the end user in mind and the purpose of the tech. Exactly. Designing with I'm going to say designing with the human in mind. Diane, initial tech implementation usually goes well. Gaining adoption is the hard part. The tech implementation goes well because what am I doing? My measure of success, the goes well, is go live. I have to switch my mindset in digital from focusing on minimum viable product to minimum lovable product. Does that make sense? I have to switch from minimum viable to minimum lovable. Diane, if you can hear me, what's your favorite app that you use? The favorite app that you use on the App Store, if you can say it. Okay? If you can say it, my favorite app is X. Okay? Now, the reason that the first time you downloaded it, that you didn't delete it, was because what? It was minimum lovable. If you download an app, Diane, that you don't like, what do? Delete it. How long do you give it to decide if you like it or not? Minutes. You don't say, I'm going to leave it on here for the next month and give it a try when I have time. I give it minutes. And then what do? If I don't like it, delete it. And then how often do I go back to see if it gets better once I've deleted it? Never. Thank you, Candy. So when you push things out to employees or managers or leaders or HR business partners, and you're like, hey, guys, don't worry. It's minimum viable product. It's our MVP. But guess what? It's going to get better. The same behavior that we have when it comes to downloading apps is the behavior that they have. And then we have people, like we had earlier in the chat here from Diane, who said the initial tech implementation goes well. Gaining adoption is the hard part. Gaining adoption is because we're not showing value in phase one. And the value has to be to us as employees, managers, leaders, not you as HR tech. If it is going to be for just HR tech in phase one, guess what? Don't roll it out to anyone else. Now, to do this, I'm going to talk through 8 habits required to achieve return on investment when it comes to digital. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to be able to go through all of these in the level of detail, but you're going to get them all. And once again, if you have questions, please put them on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to give you more detail. We have a lot of content behind each of these. So distributed authority, digital competence, digital commitment, data fitness, radical simplicity, value thinking, network orientation, and changefulness. Once again, for those of you that don't follow me on LinkedIn, I just wrote a piece this morning on changefulness. Why? Because I was sitting with a client, we were talking about the difference between change management and changefulness. We're going to talk about that at the end of this, but it's one of those examples of digital habits. So let's start with distributed authority. Managers are enabled and empowered to make people decisions within their sphere of authority without redundant oversight or unnecessary approvals. Managers are enabled and empowered to make people decisions. Why this is important? Because I'm actually focusing on automating workflows and leveraging direct access. Now, for those of you that haven't been part of LeapGen events before, we try to get organizations to stop using the term self-service and use the term direct access. How do I give employees and managers direct access to the tools they need to do their job? Self-service is a module. Does that make sense? There's a big difference between direct access and self-service. Self-service is a module. I'm giving people direct access to information. And with direct access to information and empowerment, all of a sudden I'm distributing authority. So please, please, please keep that in mind. Distributed authority. Now, in order to make this work, managers need to have that trust. Candy, thank you. We call it transparent. There has to be that trust there to do it. But this is a key component, guys, because if your leadership team isn't bought into this, or your business partners are not bought into this, or your business says, I don't want our managers doing that stuff. I want HR doing that stuff. Don't try to put technology in and say, oh, the technology is not working. The technology is working fine. You didn't spend enough time up front on that 90%. Does that make sense? You didn't spend enough time up front on that 90%, on communication, on how we're going to measure success, on defining how our audience wants to work, and then thinking about how do I do it in a journey. No one ever in the world, unless they work in HR, wants to use HR tech applications. That is not a blasphemous statement. Okay, most employees don't even know what HR applications are. They want to be able to have an experience that allows them to get to where they're going to easily and simply to get something done. Digital competence. Now, what is digital competence? Digital competence means that I have a team of people that are focused on the people experience. Now, in my first book, I actually said we need to kill the term HRIS. And I got beat up for that, to be honest with you. And some of you might work in HRIS, so I apologize. But you need to be part, or you need to be the people experience team. And as part of that, you own the digital strategy, the processes, the operations, the how things work, and where the data is. Okay, there's a big difference between someone that owns just the technology versus a digital strategy. So often, we'll work with companies, or the first time I'll talk to someone, I'll say, hey, before we talk, share your digital strategy. And what they'll send to me is a list of the technologies they're using. That's not a digital strategy. That's a list of software vendors or a list of tools. A digital strategy is what am I trying to do? And that's today's HRIS. That is today's HRIS. Today's HRIS works east-west, not north-south. And the number one thing for this team is to own experience. Because if experience works, then guess what? Your adoption issues are much, much simpler. Most employees with an organization spend about 40% of their time fooling around with business tools that they can't figure out what to do with. 40%. This team that's digital competent, that's constantly teaching the rest of HR how to be digital, not do digital, but be digital, is the second habit. Now, you partner with IT, but if you still have an HR organization that says we're not digital, I beg you, let me do a Mindset for Success session with them. Free. Okay? Because HR has to be digital today, you guys. I don't mean to be so passionate about it, but it has to be. If you're counting on IT, which, by the way, is there to support your digital strategy, but it doesn't create the digital strategy. Number 3, a digital commitment. I'm constantly thinking about, at the HR leadership team level, new ways to work, new ways to get things done, new ways to deliver services. New ways to drive experience. That's a commitment to digital. Okay? If you're getting, I'm sorry, we can't afford it, we're not making the business case correctly. If we're saying, sorry, we can't afford it, we're focusing too much on tech and not enough about outcomes. So digital commitment is one of the things that's so key, you guys. Candy just put in the chat, what if we, the HR team, wants to go digital but it's getting pushback from above? Then we, the HR team, Candy, are not doing a good enough job of explaining the impact that this is going to have on the workforce, the impact that this is going to have on profit, the impact that this is going to have on customer experience. Mandy, hi. Mandy just said, don't make it about HR, make it about the business. So often, people do business cases, but they're HR cases. They must be business outcome based. You should look at your 2023 goals and objectives of your organization and immediately tie whatever you're doing to those. If you can't, you shouldn't be doing it. If you can't, you shouldn't be doing it. So let's go to poll 2. Is your organization today committed to digital? I would ask you, beg you, try not to choose C, because that's the easy answer. I put it in there because I didn't want someone to say they're working on it in the chat. But yes, you're committed at the HR leadership team level. No, you're not there yet. C, you're working on it. My bet is that about 35 to 40% are yes, and about 60% are no, or working on it. So 30 to 35% yes, 60 to 65% no, or working on it. The poll has ended. Based on how I did in the first one, I'm probably not going to be right here, but we'll see. We'll share the results in a second. Tabulation, drum roll. Woo! Completely wrong again. 61% say yes. 61%. That is awesome. Now, what that means is that everything I'm talking about here today, you should already be doing, or you should be embedding into everything that you're doing today. So this is the best number for me and the most positive thing I've seen in 2023 so far. It's 60% are committed, which means your CHRO doesn't look at doing things the old-fashioned way. Your silos are being broken down. You're looking at data as one across the organization, which leads us to number 4, data fitness. Data fitness? data fitness. Data is not just a collection process. You don't just collect data. You truly, as an HR organization and as a digital HR function, need to say to yourself, data is sexy and data is our lifeblood. Now, I'm sure no one in this room here chants data is sexy. If you do, please say you do, because it's going to be funny. But data is our lifeblood. Okay? And what's so important about this, you guys, is that you have to think about data fitness as, once again, not just, hey, guess what? We're going to roll out a talent acquisition system, and we're going to store data there. Then we're going to roll out a core HR system. We're going to store data there. Then we're going to put in a performance data system, performance management system, and we're going to store data there. And then one day, a CEO or a CHRO is going to say, hey, where did we get most of our people from, and what skills do they have? Data fitness is the end of just thinking about counting people and a shift to making people count. The end of just counting people from a quota standpoint, a head count standpoint, but a shift into how do we make people count. And in today's world where layoffs are happening, do you know how many skills are walking out of the door of companies today that could be used that people just don't know that the skills are there? And do you know how many people are being left in organizations that don't have the right skills? It's tremendous. Now, some of you are starting to get used to this concept of AI or artificial intelligence. In the chat, just say yes or no if you've played around with ChatGPT. Just say yes or no. ChatGPT. For those of you that have not played with ChatGPT, I beg you, Chris Sands, do you agree? I beg you to go see what it is. Now, I don't care, here, Chris, thank you. I don't care if you use it or not, but you have to see what it is. Now, why do you have to see what it is? Because it's our future. It is the ability to take data, ask a question. I mean, Chris, imagine if you had ChatGPT on top of all of your data as the organization, and I was a manager or a leader, and I asked ChatGPT a question, or said, hey, write me the top 10 reasons why people have left the company in 2022. I used plain English, and guess what spit out? That data. You guys, we are there. And I am so excited about that. Like, we're there. And I don't think, I mean, yes, I know everyone's checking it out, which is great. Check it out when it's not so busy. But what's most important is to understand we are there. Okay? But those that use tools like that are going to win. Those that think those tools are blah or cheating or ruining the world are going to lose. Yes, Pamela, thank you for saying it's not just ChatGPT. Just like social media and just like other things, I try to give people a way to experience things so they can understand that, hey, AI is being built into all of these tools. But to understand it, sometimes we have to see it. Okay, so please keep that in mind. But why am I talking about AI when it comes to data fitness? Because guess what? If you don't have data, what can't you use? AI. And you will be at a severe disadvantage forever. as an organization. So we must think about how do our processes capture data. Journeys are driving that feeling, which allows people to trust the fact that they're giving data to us. So data fitness is going to be key and more key every single week of 2023. To make this work, we have to rethink how simple we make things. Radical simplicity is a core concept of being digital, which means I don't have 9 ways of doing a comp increase, or 8 ways of doing a performance review, or 17 ways of getting payroll done, or 37 ways of making sure that people find the document they're looking for. Because if I don't drive simplicity into everything I do, guess what? I'm never going to get to some of the stuff that I'm trying to get to at the other end, which are those values, those outcomes. So, I mean, to me, you guys, this is the hardest part of deployment. And the reason I'm not calling this implementation is because this has to be done before implementation or during implementation. Because if it's not, what ends up happening is you move into implementation and you're like, oh, yeah, who can I pick on? Joan Kozak said, hey, that's the way we've always done it, so let's just do it that way and we'll change it later. And then Mandy Whiting said, oh, you know what, too hard to change, we'll do that later. And then Mike Drew says, oh, too hard to change, we'll do it later. And then John says, oh, no, we can't do that, we'll do it later. Guess when later happens? Never. We have to push this up front. Because if we don't, all we're doing is continuing to reinforce the static quo. So please, and why does it say radical? Because there's nothing more important than this. If we don't simplify what we do, we're never going to have the resources to get done what we're trying to do. This one's basic. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but how do we think about the value that we're doing? What's the value of employee experience? And don't just tell me, quantify it. What's the value of a new way to do performance management? What's the value of a new applicant tracking system? What's the value of artificial intelligence? The value has to be tied to the business, not to HR. Okay, so value thinking. Everything I do from a digital standpoint has to be tied back to value. And that should be measured every single day, week, month, year. Not like, oh, this is going to save us $3 million this year because we're going to reduce 8.7 heads, and we're going to then take those 8.7 heads and reinvest them. I'm going to ask you guys a question. In the chat, tell me how you are today. Green, yellow, red. Green, you're great. Yellow, not so good. Red, bad day. Yellow, green, yellow, green, green, yellow, yellow, green, 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 yellow, yellow, green, 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 yellow, 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 yellow. Nancy Longo. What would the value be if I could turn you from yellow to green right this second? What would the value be to the organization if I could turn you from yellow to green? It would be massive. You'd be more productive, you'd be happier, and you're going to make a customer happier. You're going to be motivated. Now, how do I even know that you're yellow, Nancy? Because I asked. What's the value of pulsing a workforce? I just demonstrated it to you. Very, very important. Natalie, I see your question. I'm going to get to it. I think the challenge is related to quantifying the ROI of adaptation and behavioral change in the short term. Completely agree with that statement, Juna. And the quantifying has to start with what I call the other side of the equation. Not the value to you in HR, but the value to the business. Okay? And sometimes the ROI of that change is going to be short. Like it's going to be small up front, but it's really focusing on where it's going to get us long term. Number 7, network orientation. Once again, I'm going to say the way that we work in HR today, we still have COEs. COEs drive strategy, policy, and delivery. Strategy, policy, and delivery. If every COE owns delivery, is it ever going to feel like one? The answer to it is no. If every COE owns their own strategy around delivery, it's never going to feel like a single employee experience. So if I'm focusing on an employee experience, or a candidate experience and an employee experience, I have to, like I said, work east-west, which means I need to change my organization so that the COEs don't own delivery. They're partnering with the people experience team to own delivery, but they don't own it themselves. Why? Because what happens is benefits pushes something out, recruiting pushes something out, learning pushes something out, and guess what? They all look different, feel different, taste different, smell different, all have names of different systems, and what? People get confused. What do? Call. Who's the person they call? Operations and HR business partner. What do those people do? Say, we have bad systems, it's too confusing, I'll just do it for you. And then what do? Say our technology doesn't work. Sorry for that rant, but I hope that makes sense. Like I said all the time. It happens over and over and over and over again. So until we shift that and help the leadership team in HR that works in these COEs realize that if we think east-west from a data standpoint, an experience standpoint, a journey standpoint, then we'll break these silos. And you still, as a COE, get to do what you want to do, but to design for the empty chair to the employee, it doesn't feel like everything's separate. And that's what drives frustration. Number 8, changefulness. I beg you to read what I wrote on LinkedIn earlier this morning. Change management are the tasks that go in to driving adaptation. Changefulness is the tilling of the soil to make sure that the change gets planted. Now, that's not meant to be like, oh, man, that's way too deep. I hope it makes sense. If I roll out change management stuff all day long to a bunch of people that aren't ready for change, what do they say? Nothing. They just ignore it. The best change management deployed to people that don't have changefulness ready and they're not thinking that way, it just bounces off them and goes into the trash. So we can't just roll out change management stuff the way we always have, which has been basically training, to a bunch of people that don't like change or don't trust HR, and all of a sudden say, oh, why didn't change management work? Change management most of the time doesn't work because I don't take changefulness first. Tracy, thank you. You have to get the organization prepared before you implement and deploy that change. Okay? So, quick question. Poll 3. Does your organization have the muscle and capability required to be intentional with how fast change is happening? Now, once again, I can't see the responses coming in. I'm going to guess that this is going to be about 80% no, 20% yes, because oftentimes we think that we're better than we are. I actually don't think it's that high even, but I think that's about, actually, let me change that. 30% yes, 70% no. I don't actually think any organization does, personally, because things are changing faster than what organizations can possibly be ready for. But for the most part, I'd just love to get your thoughts here. Poll has ended. We'll wait for the results to come in. And once again, this doesn't mean massive change. This could be just a tiny change. This could be just a tiny change. Oh, I was close. 30% yes, 70% no. 30% yes, 70% no. Now, what does this mean? It just means that we have to be intentional internally and make sure our digital team has change capability. I'm going to say that again. We have to make sure our digital HR team has change capability, change skill, change competency. Because guess what? If it's going to borrow it from marketing or borrow it from communications when they have time to help us, sorry to be a little bit sarcastic there, that's not enough. You need someone that's owning change, driving both change management and the mindset of changefulness over and over again. Change management, a process for making changes stick. Changefulness, the organization's ability to be fluid. And once again, a lot of HR leadership teams don't even think this way. Those 8 things, I'm going to go back. These 8 things are the things that every HR leadership team must be thinking about today. They can't say, oh, don't worry about it, I've got HRIS thinking about it. It has to be at the HR leadership team level. Okay, and like I said, for whatever reason, let people watch this webinar, but if you'd like me to present this back to your team, happy to do it anytime. Those 8 things. Now, these things make up your digital culture. So what's our digital culture? What is our digital culture as an organization, as an HR organization? That should be what you walk away from this webinar thinking about today. What is our digital culture as an organization? Now, when we think about that, it's going to introduce questions like this. Do we want to be high-touch human or high-touch digital? Everyone says we want to be high-touch. How much is high-touch human versus high-touch digital? How much do we want people to do this kinds of different work? How much are we going to actually change versus work around the barriers that we have? Those types of things make us all realize that digital is a journey. It's not a flip of a switch. So I am going to put this slide up here. This is a digital capability assessment that I would love for you guys to take. So scan that QR code. As this is up here, I'm going to answer some questions that have come in. Natalie asked a question. How do you suggest we think about radical simplicity in comparison to the desire for personalization? It's a great question, Natalie. And Natalie, the way I'm going to talk about this is asking you the question and making sure you ask the question of your team. What do you want to be great at versus what is it okay to be okay at? The things that you want to be great at that are going to impact personalization, that's where you want to think about how do I use data to drive some specificity. But when it comes to things where it's just, hey, guess what? It doesn't matter if they have this document or this document or this document. They all say the same thing. It doesn't matter if there's 3 levels of approval or 4 levels of approval. Guess what? It's fine. So when we think about personalization, what are we trying to drive? Who is the audience? And how are they going to think about simplicity? But overall, when you think about radical simplicity, that just because it's simple doesn't mean it's personalized. Or opposite, just because it's not simple doesn't mean it's personalized. Those two things are oxymorons in a way. They don't really fit together. Simplicity is basically the combination of the underlying and top of the experience. And then when we think about personalization, what are the things we want to personalize that are going to truly make a difference? The other question that came in is strategy reinforcement. I think part of the strategy is reinforcement over and over again. How do you do that? You create a vision map. I'll say this really quickly. I hope you all have a vision map. If you don't have a vision map, once again, hook me up on LinkedIn. I'll send you a vision map. What do we want our measures of success to be? What's our vision? And then back to the question, Tracy, continue to reinforce that no matter what. Every day. Not just, hey, let's do a kickoff. And then celebrate the fact that you're not going to ever have a go-live party again. Sure, I just made some people feel weird. You're not going to have a go-live party again. You're going to have a go-begin party. Because when you're live with the technology, that's when you begin to start to see the value. And you begin to see the transformation. And you truly realize that you shifted from doing technology to being digital. We're at the bottom of the hour, you guys. I hope this was helpful. Please put in the chat whether this was helpful. Just say yes or no. I hope I made someone yellow to green. It's the most exciting time ever to be in our space. And please hang with us because we have the best technology ever in the space we've ever had. It's up to us to truly, truly drive what we're trying to do. Alicia, I'll turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you so much. When you see the chat coming through, but what a great hour and just so many great takeaways. I know we're finished up. Want to thank HRE again for having us today. A special thank you to Workday, who sponsored this presentation and just such a great partner with them. As you said, you'll get the recording and the deck, so we're very excited to send that out to you. If you didn't get the QR code, I also put the link in the chat, so you can grab that link and save it for when you have time to fill out that assessment. Thank you so much, you guys, and have a great day. Jason, thank you for doing this, for preparing and presenting today.
Thanks, all. Have a great rest of the week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.